So thank you both for being today here. And I feel a bit anxious, but also very happy because it's the first time that a politician from Romania is attending our interviews. And I'm very happy because for us, this is a huge next step. So Cristina is also the person who initiated the law in the Romanian parliament, and she gathered more than 100 parliamentaries, politicians that signed the initial projects of law. And because she also studied in UK and she has a background in UK, she wanted so much to meet you today. So um, thank you both of you. And I want to mention that Cristina is a member of the Health Committee in the Romanian Parliament. So she's in the middle of the problem there. And before I leave Cristina to ask you some questions, I would like to say a few words about you, Professor Barnes, again, and I will read it from your site, the Medical Cannabis Clinics. So, Professor Michael Barnes is a consultant neurologist and consultant in rehabilitation medicine, founder of Medical Cannabis Clinicians Society, honorary professor of neurological rehabilitation in Newcastle University, director of Christ Church Group, managing partner National Neurological Rehabilitation Chambers, chief medical officer Soul Global Investments, and he's a leading clinical neurologist and consultant in rehabilitation medicine. He is the honorary professor of neurological rehabilitation at the University of Newcastle, founder and president of the World Federation of Neurological Rehabilitation, and past president of the British Society of Rehabilitation Medicine, and was elected to the membership of the European Academy of Rehabilitation Medicine. He has also served as the chief executive of several NHS organizations and is considered to be a leading world authority in neurological rehabilitation. Professor Barnes co-authored the All-Party Parliamentary Group report on the evidence for medical cannabis as part of its drug policy reform, working with the Irish Parliament on the medical cannabis debate through discussion and lectures. He has spoken at multiple conferences and forums, including medical conferences and parliamentary meetings on the topic. He is a supporter of the End Our Pain, the campaign for medical cannabis law change, and is also a trustee of medical cannabis law reform organization CLEAR and the Patient Medical Cannabis Campaign Group United Patients Alliance. As the first UK doctor to successfully negotiate a prescription for medical cannabis from the government in the case of Alfie Dingley, Professor Barnes is recognized as a powerful and influential voice in medical cannabis policy in Europe and also in Romania, if I may add. So thank you again. So many titles, but it's necessary because everyone has to know that this discussion is very serious. And we are both very honored that you gave us the chance to explain us again why it's important to pass this law in Romania as well. Before Cristina starts to ask you the important things that she has to tell to her colleagues, and also to us, to Romanians, generally speaking, I would like to ask you if you can tell us shortly how did cannabis get to the blacklist, to the drug most, how do you say, addictive drugs throughout the world. And because I know this is a very interesting story, and it's very important for us to know the background. Why did cannabis get there? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for all that. How did it get there? Well, as you probably know, very briefly, cannabis is the oldest medicine known to man. It's been around for centuries. About 5,000 years is the known recording, starting in China and then spreading along the Silk Road into Europe many hundreds of years ago. And it's well accepted as a medicine. up to 1930s, something like that. It was a very accepted medicine, a botanical medicine. Most of medicine in those days was botanical products. But then it began to go out of favor in the 1930s for two reasons. One, because there was the modern pharmaceutical industry started and botanical medicines were going out of fashion. But secondly, there was a unfortunate political debate around it, starting with the Opium Conference in 1927, I think, where it was a precursor of the United Nations, were trying to stop the international trade in narcotics. And it was actually a delegate from Egypt who stood up and said he wanted cannabis incorporated as a narcotic and equally restricted. And that went through. It wasn't on the agenda. It had no evidence base behind it, but nevertheless, it went through. And then that was the start of its demonization, I suppose you could say, which then got politically demonized thereafter, mainly from the United States, where the Federal Bureau of Narcotics chief called Harry Anslinger had began a campaign against cannabis, which he called marijuana in those days. It was a very nasty, racist, anti-Mexican, anti-black campaign, which he did for purely political reasons. This is historically factual. It's not me speculating. In cahoots with a newspaper magnate called J. Randolph Hearst, and they had a very successful campaign against cannabis. And as a result of that campaign, cannabis remained rather demonized, seen as anti-establishment for up to the present day, really. And then finally, in 1961, the United Nations and the Single Convention of Drugs and Narcotics put cannabis in the most restrictive section. And that forced the countries, which are all in the world except 4, I believe, to put forward their own misuse of drugs regulations. In the UK, we had the Misuse of Drugs Act in 1971, and that still is in play. And it's only in the last very few years that some countries, now 50, have begun to overcome the UN Convention and license cannabis as a medical use. And as you know, a few countries are licensing cannabis for recreational use, but we're mainly talking about medical use today. And there's 50 countries in the world where now it's medically allowed to be prescribed in various ways of doing it, some decriminalized, some more formally legalized, but nevertheless 50 countries are now able to use medical cannabis. So that's very briefly, it's a history.
But it's very important. So thank you very much. Christina will take over, but I want to say that she is also very brave because she's doing that, and she started by herself, and she initiated a dialogue with me and my organization because also of the petition that I told you in our first talk through email. And because of COVID and because of the fact that we won't organize the conference right now, she thought that would be very important for us to have this discussion online, first of all, and when we will have the opportunity to talk when you will be present in the parliament in Romania, we'll have another conference back there. So, Christina, thank you again.
Thank you, Alexandra. Professor Barnes, let me start by thanking you once again for this interview and all your efforts that went into supporting us through this process. Unfortunately, like Alexandra said, due to COVID-19 restrictions, we were not able to proceed with our debate that was organized for March this year. And basically now we have to adjust. So we adapted, instead of Bucharest and holding this discussion in the parliament, as it was meant to be, hosted by the Health Commission, we have found this online virtual solution. We think that this still gives us a very good opportunity to answer some of the most frequent questions that I have been asked by colleagues and others who have manifested a true interest in the benefits that medical cannabis can bring to patients. But also at the same time, they have expressed a lot of fears, of worries regarding maybe the encouragement of recreational consumption and all that brings. Also side effects they are asking and so on. So I'm just going to start with maybe what is to me the most important question, and that is who can benefit truly from medical cannabis?
Okay, well, thank you. And there's quite good evidence for about 5 medical indications. I mean, there's overwhelming evidence for 5. The American Academy of Medicine, Engineering and Sciences said there was conclusive evidence for the following: pain, chronic pain. There's no doubt it's an analgesic and works for chronic pain. Number 2 is epilepsy, and it's the well-known cases of childhood drug-resistant epilepsy can definitely be helped mainly by CBD, that's the non-psychoactive part of the plant, but also to a limited extent by THC, which is the psychoactive part. The third one is anxiety, and in our clinics, the overwhelming numbers are for about 2/3 are for pain and about 20% for anxiety. It's also really useful for nausea and sickness in the context of chemotherapy. They're the 4 main indications that it's helpful for. And then it's also known for a lot of other indications that have less robust but moderately good evidence, and that's things like sleep. Some would say it's very good for sleep, some say it's less good, but there's more evidence is needed, but no doubt it helps sleep, it helps appetite. And the other one that's in the good category is spasticity, for muscle spasm after multiple sclerosis or stroke, for example. So if you put those 5 robust things together, plus sleep and appetite, that covers most of the indications. But of course, you've got to think then, so take fibromyalgia, for example. It doesn't help a diagnosis, but it helps the symptoms of the diagnosis. So in fibromyalgia, there are problems with sleep, it can help that. Problems with pain, it can help that. Problems with anxiety, it can help that. And also then take cancer. There's some evidence that some cannabinoids have anti-cancer properties. I don't think that's robust enough at the moment to say we should try cannabis for all sorts of cancers. That's a step too far at the moment. But if you have cancer, you can help the pain in cancer, spasticity in cancer, epilepsy in cancer, anxiety in cancer, sleep problems in cancer, poor appetite in cancer. So we've got to think of cannabis mainly as a helper of symptoms and less as a curer of diagnoses, if that makes sense.
I see. Can you give us some examples from your own experience through cases where you've got some real results with patients who have been treated with medical cannabis?
Yeah, absolutely. Take pain to start with. I think, as I said before, that's 2/3 of the people who come to our clinics have painful conditions. And I remember a man who came to the clinic about 2 or 3 months ago now with severe chronic back pain from an accident at work. He injured his spine. He was in a lot of pain all the day. He'd stopped work as a result of it. He'd tried all the standard painkillers like gabapentin, pregabalin, duloxetine, and particularly was on a lot of opioids, and nothing had really helped. So he came fairly desperate. We tried a simple cannabis product, mainly CBD at first, and then we increased it to add some THC. And finally, on the full cannabis, full spectrum product, his pain improved. It didn't go away completely, but it improved, and he stopped all the opioids. So he had a lot of the less symptoms from taking less opioids, and his pain improved to the extent that he was able to get back to part-time work. So that was a very good, and that's not an unusual story. It's not one that's just the best I can come up with. That's a very common story. About 80% of people who come to the clinics with pain are helped for their pain. Maybe not, maybe just some are improved a little bit. Some can get a better quality of life, and some are really dramatically improved who can get back to work and function in society. So that's one example of pain.
And also from what I've understood following your interviews and your history with medical cannabis. I understood also there was the initial fight for Alfie, and
Yes. Yeah, the other excellent example is Alfie, and the early. Well, the law was changed in the UK as a result of a very good media campaign for the children with epilepsy. There's something over nearly 20,000 children in the UK with drug-resistant epilepsy. But if I take Alfie as the main example, Alfie has a very rare form of epilepsy called PCDH19. Very rare in boys. There's only 4 boys recorded in the world with that syndrome. It mainly manifests by some learning disability and autism, but very resistant epilepsy. And he tried every anticonvulsant that was licensed in the UK, and none have had any serious effect on his epilepsy. He was still having 300 to 400 seizures every week, which is an awful lot of seizures. He then went, his mother and father were then desperate. They went to Holland, where they were able to get a cannabis product. It took about 6 weeks to get him stable on the product, but eventually it worked to the extent that he stopped the seizures altogether, and he had no seizures for over a year. Alexandra, do you want me to have a word with the builders? This is getting too noisy.
I thought it's because of me, so I muted my microphone, but
Yeah, I muted mine. No, it's the builders downstairs. If you want to bear with me, can you want to edit this? I'll go and speak.
No, it's perfect because it's more real like this. You know, we are human beings
Very
and
real. I can
from
hear the
our
noise in my
own.
ear the whole time. Do you want to bear with me a minute and I'll go and ask the builder to have a cup of tea for 10 minutes and he'll stop drilling. I'll put it on mute.
So, you've offered a tea?
Sorry, I've had a word. We've offered the builder a cup of tea.
Yeah.
And hopefully going to stop for 10 or 15 minutes. So
Perfect.
I'll start again. Shall I talk about Alfie again? I was in the middle of talking about Alfie. Shall I start that again?
Not again because we will
Okay.
cut it, but if you can continue with Alfie because it's important.
Okay. No, his parents went to Holland. They tried cannabis preparation and medicine from a company called Bedrocan. And nothing much happened for about 6 weeks, as I said. And then slowly but surely, over the following few days, after about 6 weeks, the seizures stopped completely, which is a remarkable result. He'd had a whole range of anticonvulsant drugs, still having several hundreds of seizures, and they just stopped. And they stopped for about a year. As a result of his mother wanted to come back to live in the UK. She didn't want to live in Holland permanently. So they then started the campaign, and eventually it was a very successful campaign over about 3 months. And eventually the UK government, as a direct result of that campaign, changed the law. Alfie continued to do very well. After about a year, he had some seizures back again. And it took us about 6 months, not many seizures, he was still much better. But it took about 6 months for us to get the seizures back under control. And now for about the last 6 months, he's had no seizures again. We just adjusted the strain of the cannabis and the dose of the cannabis, and that was in the end remarkably successful. They're the 2 best stories I can come up with: epilepsy and pain. And the other sort is anxiety. We've had many patients with chronic severe anxiety not responding to not just pharmaceutical medication, but with group therapy, psychological therapy, with not much benefit. And they've tried mainly CBD, high CBD cannabis, and have hugely improved their anxiety, and again able to function again in society.
Professor, Alfie's example is truly remarkable. And just to follow up on that, I wanted to ask you if you could tell us of the risk of maybe side effects of medical cannabis, and as well, what would a traditional treatment mean for a child who has epilepsy?
Yeah, well, for the side effects of cannabis, I mean, cannabis isn't right for everybody. I'm not going to say it's a cure-all. It's a remarkably good and very safe medicine, but it's not right for everybody. In the very short term, CBD is actually remarkably safe, and there's very few side effects from CBD. THC, which is the psychoactive part that gets you high, does have short-term side effects, like mainly dizziness, drowsiness, some disorientation, dry mouth. Now, and those side effects tend to be worse the more THC you take. But we shouldn't forget, when you combine CBD with THC, which is what you do medically, CBD counteracts the side effects of THC. So actually having any serious THC side effects is actually quite rare. Now, there are some people with serious pain who need a very high dose of THC, and they can get some of those short-term side effects, but they prefer the side effects to the pain. In the long term, people are worried about things, and it's not right, as I said, for everybody. We wouldn't give cannabis, generally speaking, to someone with active schizophrenia or active psychosis, because the THC component can make that worse. It can trigger an episode of psychosis. Either if you've got it or your first degree relative got it, like mother, father, brother. Cautious about prescribing for schizophrenia and psychosis. Also, it can speed up, THC can speed up the heart rate, and you don't want that perhaps immediately after a heart attack or a stroke, or if you've got a heart rhythm problem where you don't really want to speed up the heart, you wouldn't prescribe cannabis for that reason. And you'd be a bit cautious if someone who already has a cannabis dependency syndrome. You can get a bit dependent on cannabis, street cannabis. That's said to occur in about 9% of people who take high THC street cannabis. So you wouldn't want to give a THC product to someone like that either. But with those caveats, then cannabis is remarkably safe. But as I say, not right for everybody. And even if you are okay to take it, it doesn't help everybody. I don't want to make it clear that I want to make it clear that cannabis isn't a cure for every person. It isn't.
If I might add, I'm sorry, Christina, for me it's very important because most of the people who are asking me if could die after using cannabis, and I've read reports and death are reported 0 if using cannabis, because I know that it's versus opioids, what you already know, the statistics are totally different. So from cannabis, could they die if they overdose?
It's a very good point. Particularly the opioid crisis in the States is now spreading into Europe. I think in the States there were something like 46,000 people died from opioid overdose last year. And I know it's now beginning to be a problem in the UK. I'm not sure what it is in Romania, but many of the prescribed pharmaceutical medicines that are not safe, and you can die in overdosage. But fortunately, you can't die from a cannabis overdosage. No one has ever been reported to have died from a cannabis overdosage. You can be poorly. If you take far too much, you can have a very fast heart rate. You can even become psychotic. You can be very anxious, but you don't die. I mean, you have to wait, perhaps a rather unpleasant few hours when you've taken a big overdose, but you do survive the experience. And that's a real benefit, particularly for those with pain who are on opioids, who can take an overdose of opioids, yes. So it's very safe.
Or also with kidney failures, as I told you, the case of my mother. If you have problems with kidney or other liver or other organs, that you cannot use proper medicine, like traditional medicine.
Right. There are many medicines where you've got liver or kidney failure where you shouldn't use them. And in cannabis, you have to be cautious like any other medicine. But there's no known reason why you shouldn't prescribe in someone with kidney or liver failure. But you have to be cautious and you probably use a lower dose because it's metabolized more slowly. It doesn't come out in the liver or through the liver or the kidneys. So you have to be careful like any medicine. But generally, as a medicine, it is remarkably safe.
Thank you. I'm going to follow through with some of the other questions I received, because after registering our law proposal, we got many amendments, many points of view from different authorities, NGOs. And one of these interesting points was regarding the quality and how we can regulate this. So can you tell us how important that is to ensure the best quality so we can get the maximum medical effect for a patient?
Yeah, as you say, that's very important, and it is. We've got to remember it's a botanical product. It's a little bit different, therefore, from a pharmaceutical product. With a pharmaceutical product, you can pretty well guarantee the quality, and all the dosage is all the same. What it says on the bottle is what you get in the tablet. However, in cannabis, it's slightly less able to be as precise as a pharmaceutical product because it isn't. It's a botanical. It's a plant. Having said that, though, you can guarantee quality if you grow the plant to good agricultural collection practice, GACP standard, or even GMP standard. That means good manufacturing practice. And the EU, as I'm sure you know better than I do, have rules and regulations about good manufacturing practice. And in the UK, for example, we cannot use a cannabis medical product unless it is made to GMP standard. That's the good thing about that is it means it's consistent batch to batch. It's also got no contaminants. It's got no pesticides or heavy metals or fungi in it or anything like that. So it's a pure product and it's a consistent product and it's a safe product. So I think the standard we have to use is GMP standard. And also every batch should have a certificate of analysis, which means that they analyze every batch and the patient or the doctor can look at what exactly is in that batch and convince themselves that the dose is the correct dose and it has no contaminants. So you need a GMP standard and a certificate of analysis. And with those two things, you can pretty well guarantee the quality and standard of the product.
I see you said that this is a botanical product, but I know that it has also been used to develop some medicine for multiple sclerosis, for example, by the pharmaceutical industry. So if we were to go by the directive of the European Parliament that encourages countries to invest more into research to legalize medical cannabis, should we expect more interest from this sector as well, not just patients wanting and just brave doctors moving forward?
Yes, I would love to see, we certainly need more. I think there is good research in cannabis. It's not the classic pharmaceutical research, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies, though there are many of those. And we have to take into account a lot of more observational work and care quality and clinical case studies and such like. We have to take into account different evidence base because it's not a pharmaceutical product. Having said that, we do need more research, certainly. There's a lot about cannabis that we don't understand, particularly the other so-called minor cannabinoids and terpenes, which seem to have medical properties. So there's a lot we don't know about cannabis, though there is equally a lot we do know about cannabis. Will the pharmaceutical industry catch up, if you like? Yes, I think they will. They've fought shy of cannabis for a long time, but it's difficult to patent the plant. So to be blunt, there's probably less profit in it. But some companies have done very well. GW Pharma developed their first licensed product called Sativex for spasticity and multiple sclerosis. And then they also produced Epidiolex, which is also a cannabis product used for drug-resistant epilepsy. And they're not quite isolates, but they're nearly isolates. So they've gone down a sort of safer pharmaceutical route. If you take Epidiolex, it's 99.9% CBD with not much else in it. And I know why they've done that. They've done that to get it licensed as a pharmaceutical product. And good luck to them, they've succeeded. But I think the evidence is that the full plant product, with all the other minor cannabinoids and terpenes in it, is probably, almost certainly, a better medicine than the pharmaceutical products. So my view, as a medicine, we need the full extract, full spectrum cannabis oils and flower. That's a better medicine than the pharmaceutical products. But I do hope we'll see the pharmaceutical industry taking an interest in this field and developing other medicines as well.
I want to add something because I'm not a politician and I could be blunt. So I know for a fact that I've read some studies. So both medicines that you mentioned are not that effective for a lot of people. So this is a fact. It's not like I improvised something. And I want to add something else. Because I already know your opinion, and it's my opinion as well that we should legalize the plant, which with the full spectrum and the whole plant. And I want to ask you to explain to us why it's important, because I also know for a fact that in the medicine school, also in Romania, they don't teach the future doctors about the endocannabinoid system and about the recent studies on the entourage effect, what you said about the full spectrum properties of the plant. So for all the people that are listening to us, I hope that also doctors, I want you to explain to them why is it so important because of the endocannabinoid system that we have.
Yeah, well, cannabis, not totally, but largely works through the endocannabinoid system. And all vertebrates, all humans and every other animal with a backbone have an endocannabinoid system. That is a sort of master controller neurotransmitter system. As I'm sure you know, our whole body functions are controlled by nerves. The nerves communicate with each other with what's called a neurotransmitter, a chemical that moves from one nerve to the next. That system needs modulating, it needs switching off, it needs reducing when necessary, and the master controller of the switching down and the modulating of that system is the endocannabinoids. That affects all the other body neurotransmitters, so it affects all the body's functions, basically. And we have natural cannabinoid receptors in our body, and our brain, and our spine, and the rest of the body. And we have natural chemicals that the body produces that links with those receptors to make the endocannabinoid system work, called anandamide and 2,8-G, natural endocannabinoids. And all the plant cannabinoids do, so-called phytocannabinoids, they also interact with the same system. So all they're doing is supplementing, adding in, modulating, changing, adjusting our own body's endocannabinoid system. That's basically how they work. So that's the fundamental reason why it works, and why it also, incidentally, cannabis has such a wide range of effects over many different bodily functions. Some people will say, well, a medicine can't have an effect on anxiety and pain and epilepsy and appetite and sleep. That must be some sort of snake oil, as they used to call it. But when you know how it works, then you begin to understand that the endocannabinoid system has all these functions, so the cannabis plant has all these functions. And unfortunately, for reasons I don't fully understand, the endocannabinoid system isn't really taught in medical schools, very, very rarely. I mean, I was never taught it, but then it wasn't discovered when I was being taught. But even now, since it's been discovered in the 1990s, it's still not on the medical curricula. And I think that's a real problem. That's why doctors are a bit cautious of it. They don't know about how it works and how its effect might be on the body. And so they're cautious of it. So they're never taught about a plant medicine these days. They're taught about pharmaceutical medicines. So I think that's a real problem. So doctors, and I don't mean it rudely to the doctors, but they are ignorant about cannabis. They don't understand its properties and how to make it into a medicine, how to deal with it. And that's a shame. It's an easy thing. I do a day's teaching course, and hopefully the doctors after that are a little bit more reassured about how to use it. So it's not difficult. It doesn't take months and months of training, but it does take some training and some understanding and some mentoring. And that's what we're lacking at the moment amongst the medical community worldwide. And I'm sure it's the same in Romania.
Also about the entourage effect, because I know for a fact also that it's very important, because people only speak or mainly speak about CBD or THC. And I've read the study of Ethan Russo, and I know about the entourage effect. But if you could explain to us as well,
yes,
what about the
yes.
entourage effect?
Yeah, the entourage effect is basically, and I think there's no doubt it's true. I think there's pretty convincing evidence now. That means that the whole plant works better than the individual components of the plant. And if we take as an example Alfie and his epilepsy, if he was on just a pure CBD and nothing else, then that can help the epilepsy, but it doesn't help it as much as the full plant. And there's a lot of evidence, not just from Alfie, but from larger studies now, that shows that the CBD isolate, Epidiolex, does help. It helps about 43% of the children have an improvement of at least half of their seizures. That's pretty good. But if you try out the full plant product, then that number goes up to 75 to 80% of the children who have at least 50% control of their seizures. And the other thing about it is for full plant, you use less dose, and therefore you have less side effects. So the isolates are perfectly good, but the full plant works much better. And that's the same for anxiety, the same for pain. So what we need to do is develop what we call full spectrum products. That's the whole cannabinoids. There's 147 cannabinoids in the cannabis plant. There's about over 100 terpenes and other which give it its smell but have medical properties as well. And there's flavonoids that give it its color but have medical properties as well. So it's an amazing array of chemicals in the plant, and it seems very clear that the whole lot together is better than the individual components, and that, as you say, is the entourage effect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, for all these details that are very useful for us proceeding with the debate within the Health Commission. And well, regarding that, it would be great if you could tell us the main obstacles that you are confronted with in practice, although you have a law. When you get to the practical side of things, how is that going in the UK?
Well, the law was changed in November, almost exactly 2 years ago, the 1st of November 2018. And actually, credit to the government, they changed the law very well. They allowed medical cannabis to be prescribed for any condition. It wasn't just pain or anxiety or epilepsy, it was any condition where the patient has run out of options from pharmaceutical standard products, a doctor can prescribe it. I think the only mistake the government made is that they let it only be prescribed by specialist doctors, hospital consultants, and not general practitioners. And actually, most of the control of the symptoms we've talked about, like controlling pain or anxiety or sleep or appetite, are things that are mainly dealt with by general practitioners. And I think a lot of doctors now think that GPs, as we call them, would make better cannabis prescribers than the hospital specialists. So I think that's one mistake they made, that I would encourage people to allow all doctors who are properly trained to prescribe it. In the UK, we don't prescribe a particular training program. It's up to the doctors to make sure that they're safe when they're prescribing. But I would prefer to see a more coherent and organized training programs so doctors can be trained about a different sort of medicine. So it's not like a new antihypertensive or a new anti-diabetic drug that come out where you can learn about it in 20 minutes and you're done. You do need a little bit more knowledge about botanicals, so doctors need to be trained for that. So the law is okay, but not perfect in the UK. The problem was that the government then asked some medical bodies, senior medical bodies, the Royal College of Physicians, to produce guidelines. And then they asked their National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, called NICE in the UK, to produce guidelines. And unfortunately, those guidelines were very negative, in my view, unnecessarily negative. They, for example, said that there was not evidence to use cannabis for pain, which I think is completely wrong. 50 countries have allowed it, and all those countries, with one other exception, have said that the evidence for pain is overwhelming and it should be used for pain. So we've had to struggle in the UK with some very restrictive guidelines. We have got some more positive guidelines from the Medical Cannabis Clinicians Society. So there are others, but they're not quite as powerful, if you like, as NICE, which is the National Institute. So, and that's why our National Health Service, which accounts for 95% of all medicine in the UK, is the nationalised service, the NHS. And there's only been 3 prescriptions written on the National Health Service since the law changed, just 3. So that's forcing patients into the private sector. And unfortunately, of course, in the private sector, you have to pay for the medicine, which is coming down in cost. It's less than half price than it was even in January of this year. The cost is coming down quite dramatically, but still it's expensive for many people. We have a project in the UK called Project 2021, which is aiming to get 20,000 people prescribed cannabis by the end of 2021, next year. And the cost for those people on that project is £150 sterling every month. So that's 150 times 12, which I can't work out off the top of my head, about £2,000 a year or something. So that's still a lot of money for a lot of people. It's too much for many people, but it's just about becoming affordable for some. But it's a pity that it has to be affordable for anybody, because it should be free on the National Health Service. So I think what I would certainly encourage people is to get good quality medical guidelines written by people who know what they're talking about to start with, and then make it as available as you can to as many people as you can, and then that brings the cost down and the availability up.
Right, so I can see clearly the danger of over-regulating, even though the spirit of the law, it started out in a very constructed and useful way.
Yes.
In terms of guidelines, you've got more obstacles than solutions right now. So we have to watch out for that, and certainly we have received a lot of opinions on that and how to make it more accessible and not too bureaucratic, let's put it that way. Also, I wanted to get back a bit to what initially I told you was the main fear, maybe that legalizing it from the medical point of view would encourage also the recreational use of it and the impact it would have among youth consumption of cannabis. So from your experience, from maybe what you've seen in other countries, do you think this is a real threat, a real possibility?
It's not a threat at all. I mean, the United States has given us a very useful research platform, if you like, because some states in the US where it's legal and the next door state where it's not legal. So you can compare the use, whereas the medical allowed, the effect on the recreational users. And there's no evidence in those states that the recreational use increases. The recreational use pretty well stays unchanged, whether you've got medical law or a non-medical law. And the reason for that is, first of all, that it's a little more expensive usually in the medical system, so you can still get it cheaper on the street. But also, more particularly, doctors will nearly always prescribe CBD plus THC. And the CBD counteracts the high of the THC. So if you do steal some prescribed cannabis, it's not really going to get you high like the street cannabis does. So you might try and steal it once, but you're not going to steal it again because it doesn't have the effect that you want. On the assumption that most street users want to be high, medical cannabis doesn't get you high. Now, there's not a clear overlap, but that's generally true because the CBD counteracts the THC. But the evidence from the States is very clear. Making cannabis legal medically does not increase recreational use.
You pointed out before that there are only 3 prescriptions handed out on the NHS at this moment. So how many are they using? How many people are they using the medical cannabis on the outside? As in outside of the system, outside of the prescription system. I know there are a lot of cases in my country that are benefiting somehow, but doing it illegally or maybe going to a different country.
Yeah, the numbers are, as you say, 3 people prescribed on National Health Service, which is awful. About 2,000 people now prescribed privately with a legal private prescription, and that's mainly in the last 8 months, since January this year, 9 months. But the estimate is that about 1.3 million people in the UK use cannabis for medical purposes, not recreational, for medical purposes. The total recreational users is about 3 million, but of those 1.3 million are medical. So we have, we've seen 2,000 people now for a legal prescription, but that still leaves us 1,298,000, whatever it is. Vast numbers have not been yet treated. So what I would love to see is the availability go up, the costs come down, and then the doctors and the National Health Service use it. And then I would love to see that stopping the black market use, because that helps people on the black market. You don't know the quality, you don't know what the contaminants are, you don't know whether it's got heavy metals in it or pesticides in it. You don't quite know, each batch is not going to be the same as the next batch because it's made illegally. And so there's a lot of problems on the black market, and I'd love to see that stop.
As you mentioned, and obviously maybe an increase in criminality rates, let's put it that way. Also, we can speak of the economic impacts, because taking this out of the black market, bringing it out in the open and using this to actually give an impulse to the economics by growing, by giving people a job, and also all that implies and all that comes with it, with the processing and selling and maybe exporting and all that. Is that your experience in the UK as well?
Yes, I mean, there's a big industry, and particularly after COVID, I think all countries will need some new industry stimulus for their economy. And there's no doubt that a proper medical cannabis industry will first of all provide jobs. There's something like 50,000 jobs in the medical cannabis sector in the United States at the moment. So obviously Romania and the UK have smaller populations, but it's still you're going to have several thousands of jobs from the medical cannabis sector, from growers and extractors and importers and exporters and all the infrastructure. That's one thing. And also, of course, then you can tax it, and it produces tax income. And I'm sure any country would rather tax income into their own economy rather than into the pockets of the criminal market. And if you look at Colorado, they're now selling over $1 billion of cannabis every year just in Colorado. And that last year that raised $350 million of tax income just for Colorado. So, if it's taxed sensibly and doesn't make the cost so high that people stay in the black market, that's a downside of making tax too high. Nevertheless, you will get a significant tax income and a new industry. And at the moment in Europe, there's not anyone really leading the cannabis industry. It's still dominated by Canada, a little bit more recently by Israel and Australia. There's bits of pockets of interest in places like Malta, the UK Channel Islands, where it's a different law. But there's not really a country that leading the field, as it were. And I think if Romania looks at a new industry, it could readily lead the field because there's no one in Europe doing so at the moment.
Christina, I want to add something if you agree. I wanted to talk to Professor Barnes about the growing industry because I know that it's a problem in Malta. I told you that I'm talking to another doctor from Malta, and he explained that it's very difficult for them because they have the law, but and they could buy high THC products, but only imported, so they cannot grow it. So if I may add to the deficiencies of the law, maybe one is that some countries didn't allow people to grow themselves in their country. So I hope that in Romania we would accept growing the growing industry because it's more cheaper, as you said, and we could just grow the industry by ourselves, not importing from other countries and helping other countries as well, because we have a lot of agricultural fields, so we can grow cannabis.
Yes.
So I wanted to add that because I think it's very important. And also you said, and I want to say it again because it's very important for us also in the law, that in UK it's allowed for any condition. So it's very important because I saw also some laws and that are restrictive. So we cannot restrict the area because I actually read the law in California and they added, if I remember correctly, so on in the end. So they said all the conditions and then they said so on because the studies are not that well developed, so we have to improve the studies, and maybe we will find some other diseases for which cannabis will be.
Right. I think particularly cancer. I think there's no doubt that cannabinoids have anti-cancer effects. That's absolutely scientifically certain. Our knowledge is not advanced enough to say we should use it for particular sorts of cancer as yet. Although there's plenty of anecdotal tales about particularly helping some types of breast cancer, brain tumors, and pancreatic cancer. But so I think, we need more research, and then I'm sure we will find other uses of cannabis, particularly in the cancer field, is my view. You need to grow it. I think Romania will be perfectly fine to grow it. And then, of course, you've got your own industry. You can control it more effectively. It's generally cheaper, depending on what the import fees and such like, but it's generally cheaper. And, of course, you can secure the supply chain. With COVID, we found the real problem we've got is getting a secure supply chain. We had products from Israel that just stopped coming because of COVID mainly. So having our own homegrown industry, I think, is really important.
Okay, and another problem that I personally have with the UK law and some other, also Malta's law, is that cannabis is approved as a third-line medicine. So I admit that I have a problem with that because I know the case of my mother and other people that I know, and basically what it's saying, Christina, is that after they are trying two different medicines, they are allowed to use cannabis. And in some cases, it's not possible for the patient to use both of the first line medicines, that are approved for their disease. So I personally have this problem, but Professor Barnes, if you could also explain to us
it's
why.
right. The general recommendation is not actually the law, but the general recommendation is that you should have tried 2 licensed medicines that didn't work, obviously, and then you can try cannabis. Now, in some circumstances, that's not difficult. Like pain medicine, there's a dozen or more that you can try. So that's not too difficult. We have, if a patient comes and says, and they have capacity, that they don't want to try this medicine or that medicine, then that's okay. They can then try cannabis. So it doesn't have to be a second or third line medicine. But I understand why the government obviously wants to encourage the use of licensed medicines first. I can see the logic of that. And then unlicensed medicines second. And cannabis at the moment, generally speaking, is an unlicensed medicine. So I can see the logic, but I agree with you that I would prefer to see it not always as second or third choice. There are some people and some conditions where it's probably better to be even a first choice. But I can see the governmental logic that licensed medicine should be used first.
Also, I want to add the importance of any type of cannabis to be legalized, any strain, because we talked in our last interview about strains and the importance of different strains. So it's a bit difficult to explain now about the strains. Maybe we'll have other opportunity. But what I wanted to mention is that I found very important what you said, that if for one patient, one strain isn't good, they should not stop. They should not say it's not good for me, cannabis is not working. They should try another strain of cannabis,
Yeah,
and so on. So it's important not to legalize only one kind of strain or,
No, that's absolutely right. If you don't respond to one strain and you're sure the dose is right, then you should swap to another strain, because if a full strain, a full spectrum product, will have a whole range of different minor cannabinoids and terpenes in it. So even if the dose of the main component, like CBD or THC, is the same, the different strains by different producers can have different effects. So if you just say we'll only allow prescription of GMP products, that actually will be fine, because now in the UK we have about 10 different producers who produce, they're all imported, but they can come into the country, all GMP quality, but all slightly different. So we now have a little bit of a choice. If product A doesn't work, we'll swap to product B. If product B doesn't work, we can swap to product C, and then usually you can find something that works. So it's important not to have just limit it to 1 or 2 producers. I think that would be unfair competition probably, but make it just GMP standard, and then a lot of different producers can come into the country, giving the doctors and the patients a broader choice.
Okay, thank you.
Sandra, if I could just go back a bit to side effects in general of traditional medicine, and I wanted to go back to that to underline how important it is to have medical cannabis from the point of view of quality of life for a patient. Because, and I'm going to give a personal example similar to Alfie's example, of a mother with a child diagnosed as epileptic. And on traditional treatment, the side effects were very serious. I'm just going to mention one, which maybe for a child is traumatizing enough. The loss of hair. And also her energy was changed, her capability of just doing the everyday things that a normal child would do. Now, from what you explained to us, and you made it very clear that even though there might be some side effects, they are not serious. Instead, would the quality of life be definitely improved? Would the side effects be as severe as the traditional medicine? Let's just refer to the epilepsy, because you're a neurologist, so it is your field.
Yeah, you're right. Standard epilepsy drugs can have significant side effects, not for everybody, but particularly drowsiness. Some can affect the liver, some, as you say, can affect the hair, some can put on weight, So generally speaking, the dose you need to have an anti-epilepsy effect, a lot of those licensed anticonvulsant drugs will have significant side effects. And often that's what stops us increasing the dose and stops it being so good, because we have to be limited with the side effects. Generally speaking, cannabis has much less side effects than the standard anticonvulsants. There's no doubt about that. Now, of course, I'm not saying that anticonvulsants are bad and cannabis is good. Cannabis can have some side effects, as we talked about. There's clearly overlap, but generally speaking, the quality of life on cannabis is better than the quality of life on standard anticonvulsant drugs. And because you've got to remember that cannabis just doesn't help epilepsy, it also helps sleep, appetite, pain, if that's a part of the syndrome they happen to have got. So it can help a whole range of other effects, many of which are quality of life issues, particularly sleep and appetite and anxiety. So cannabis can help those other things and improve quality of life, whereas the standard licensed medications often can't.
Thank you.
May I ask you another question, please? I wanted to ask for your opinion about the prescription to children, because we've talked about children, because I know that some countries are reluctant and they only want to prescribe it to adults. And I also know that there are a lot of cases in United States, and parents were so desperate that they tried from the black market for children, and now they're treating children with cannabis, as you said.
Oh.
So what about legalizing to all categories of people,
Oh, yeah.
all ages?
There's no doubt that cannabis is not more dangerous in children. Again, you have to be careful. You have to know who you're prescribing it for. You probably would be more reluctant to give a high THC product for particularly adolescent boys. That's probably sensible. But generally speaking, if a child has a condition that will benefit from cannabis, they should try cannabis. And the epilepsy is the prime example. I mean, it's far more dangerous for a child to have ongoing regular seizures at 1 or 2 or 300 every week than it is having the possibility of some side effects from cannabis. So you've got to weigh up not the adverse effects of the other drugs that they might be on, but the adverse effects of the underlying condition. And there's nothing more damaging than several hundred seizures. That's damaging the brain. So yeah, in the UK, we didn't limit it to adults. It's any age, and I think that's sensible. You've got to have a sensible doctor, properly trained to give a sensible prescription, but with that safeguard, children will be perfectly okay on cannabis.
Thank you very much for saying that. It's very important for me, because I was thinking now in children with cancer. So it's a horrible image, and it's horrible for their parents. And because of all the medication that they have to take because of the cancer, maybe cannabis would help also with pain in their situation, and not using opioids, because, you know, he's a child.
Yes,
Poor
absolutely.
child. So
Yeah.
I believe that this is a very important thing in our future law, to take into consideration using also for children cannabis. So thank you for
Yeah.
that.
I agree.
I also wanted to add, because you asked about the consumption of, Christina, you asked about the consumption of cannabis in the countries where it has been legalized as medicinal, and then recreational. So I've read also some studies, and I think that all of the countries that also allowed recreational use after medicinal use, they saw the decrease of usage of alcohol or
Yeah.
other drugs. So I thought it was very important, because it's also interesting, as I know that when they are using cannabis as a medicine, they cannot use alcohol that much.
That's
So
right.
it's also very sensitive and very important to know that this aspect,
Yes.
as it's very
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, alcohol consumption goes down around 20%
You
when
see.
you introduce cannabis recreationally, at least. And also cigarette smoking goes down by about the same, because people using cannabis will not smoke as much and not drink as much, which has another ongoing knock-on effect for public safety and such like. You won't have drunken parties on a weekend night so much, but you're quite right. Alcohol consumption goes down and cigarette smoking goes down.
Okay, So thank you for that as well.
Okay.
You want to ask something else, Christina?
I'm okay for now. I think we've taken a lot of the professor's time.
That's fine.
I wanted to ask a few things. I believe, I don't know if we have time. So we talk about children, we talk about studies. Oh, I want you to mention, because you said, I always receive this question. How many studies are there? Or some people say there are not enough studies. And I also talked before you, I talked to Cristina Sanchez. You probably know Cristina Sanchez. She's a very well-known biochemist. And she also worked with Rafael Meshulam, who discovered THC in 1974. So I know for a fact there are hundreds, thousands of studies, but I've heard from you that there is also a precise number. So if you could just tell us how many studies are there about
When I did
cannabis.
a report for the UK Parliament in 2016, there was something like 20,000 clinical studies.
Okay.
And now there's about 40,000 clinical studies. So that in 4 years, the number of clinical studies has doubled. Obviously, because it's more widely available, more countries are able to research, more people don't have so many complicated licenses to get. So the numbers are going up rapidly. And that's all studies. That's observational studies, case control studies, and also double-blind placebo-controlled studies. And people say there aren't any of those. There are plenty of double-blind placebo-controlled studies. There's 23, for example, for nausea, a similar number for pain. So there are other studies out there. I'm the first to say that we need more, but what we should remember is that cannabis, as I've said already, is a plant and doesn't lend itself very readily to double-blind placebo-controlled studies, which is more of a pharmaceutical, single-molecule pharmaceutical product model. So we shouldn't be as quite obsessed about double-blind placebo-controlled studies. But there's a lot of other very good quality evidence out there from thousands and thousands of patients with controlled studies and other ways of looking at the medicine. We need to look at what's called real-world evidence and not just double-blind studies. But the numbers, sure, there's many questions that we need to answer, but there's an awful lot of studies out there to give us an awful lot of answers now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can you add something for Christina's colleagues to just support her in the way she is supporting the law now? She also needs our support from me as a charity, from people for patients alliances, and also from you.
I'm very glad to give it support. And I think to summarize, medical cannabis is very safe. It doesn't cause some of the issues of high THC street cannabis. It's a very safe product. You need trained doctors to give it in a proper, sensible way. But with that, you can help many hundreds of thousands of people with chronic conditions who aren't going to be helped by standard medicine. People with chronic pain who have not been helped. People, children and adults with serious epilepsy who haven't been helped. People with chronic anxiety who haven't been helped. The list goes on and on. So it's a very safe thing to do. It can be a very good, consistent product if it's properly controlled and regulated and the doctors are properly trained. So I would do all I can to assist the cause in Romania. And if I can come over and talk to people and help to people when we are released from the lid of COVID, I'll be very happy to come and assist as best I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina asked me a very interesting question earlier, so I will end with that. Do you think that in COVID situation, cannabis could help?
That's a very good question. There is some evidence that in the late stage of COVID, what happens is that the body's immune system goes into overdrive. And that's actually what kills people. And that's why dexamethasone, which is a very powerful steroid, which is an immunosuppressant, it suppresses the immune system, is helping people in severe end-stage COVID. I think President Trump had dexamethasone, didn't he? I think so. It shows you how well, yes, it is. But there's evidence that cannabis, particularly CBD, but also to limited extent THC, is also immunosuppressant. And there are studies in Canada and Israel now that's early stage showing that cannabis, particularly CBD cannabis, can help to reduce the mortality in COVID. Now, it's not, we need to wait a long time for those studies to be more certain, but there's no doubt it may help COVID. Frankly, if I had COVID and I was seriously ill with it, I would want dexamethasone, but I'd also want to take some CBD as well. But hopefully, I won't need to.
Hopefully. Thank you.
Okay.
So, Christina, you want to add something in the end?
I would just like to thank you once again for this great interview, for all your support, your patience, for sharing with us your experience, your expertise, and giving us all the courage and the medical knowledge to back up this law proposal and maybe truly make a change in our own country. Thank you.
So, and if I can help at any point, just feel free to get back to me. No problem.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Okay. All right. I'll say goodbye to you.